everyone, and welcome to Tony Tonkin's show, where we talk about everything for everybody. We've got ideas to discuss about what's been happening in Australia, what's happening overseas, and whether or not a world war is really on the cards. So there's plenty of things to talk about, and as usual, I invite you to have a conversation with me about all of these particular issues. So what I'd like to start with is just mentioning that it's really helpful if you subscribe to my channel, ring the bell for further notifications. Let me know what you think, what you want to do, and the issues that matter to you, because this is about the conversation that we can have about all of those things. So I wanted to start with actually the war. How the war in Iran is impacting us, how it's impacting the supply of petroleum in particular. And I want to make one important point here, and that is that, and the question I'll be asking is Iran preventing the oil from flowing through the Strait of Hormuz? Well, the answer, surprisingly enough, is no, it isn't. What is happening, though, is that the insurance companies who insure those vessels are basically saying, well, no, we won't insure you if you send if you're still traveling through there, because you might get bombed. Now, it isn't that they actually have bombed anybody. It is, though, that the insurance companies, Lloyd's and others, large insurers of these tankers, are saying, no, we're not going to insure you, therefore don't put it at risk. And Donald Trump has turned around and said, well, I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll escort you through. Now, my guess is that escorting, him providing ships to escort some of these vessels through the strait will probably mean that they will be bombed, and consequently so will those tankers as well. So who knows what's happening, but let's clear that up. Iran aren't doing anything to prevent that from happening. They are simply at war with Israel and the United States. And it brings us to a number of rather interesting issues, I think. Number one is, can Trump and Israel win the war? If the United States pulls out of this conflict, does that mean then that Israel will remain? Because Israel is the one who seemed to be so determined to ensure that this conflict continues, because for 40 years, Netanyahu has been wanting this to happen. He's been praying for this to happen to all of his gods. He's been hoping that this would happen. And he finally was able to convince the most powerful nation in the world, military, to be able to do it. And they've gone along with him. He has sucked them into it like you would not believe. And I must confess, I think you've got to admire Netanyahu to some extent, whereby he, the Zionists and the extreme right, have been able to convince Donald Trump that this was a good thing. Because in my mind, Donald Trump will be sitting back right at this particular moment thinking, fuck, what have I done? I've involved us in this war. I don't know how it ends. I don't know why I got here in the first place. I don't know what this war is really all about. I can make shit up as I go along, which is exactly what he's doing. For example, they're saying that, well, really the reason why they've had this war is because of all the possibility that they will continue to make nuclear weapons. Well, what happened in June last year was obviously a figment of everybody's imagination, because he didn't actually destroy everything that they had. These buster bombs that he loaded on Iran did not destroy the enrichment process at all. And so the question I'm asking now, and the thing that bugs me the most, is can we possibly believe anything that this man says? At one point, he'll say one thing. Another point, Hegseth will say a completely opposite thing. And then Rubio steps in and counters everything that anybody has said before. So how is this going to work out? Well, I guess, we don't have a crystal ball. We can't actually decide any of that. But my guess is it's not going to end out well for anybody. That the regime, the IGRC in particular, are so well entrenched in Iran that they are not going to shift. And now that they've appointed a new leader, well, let's face it, Trump wanted to appoint this leader, so he says, what a dickhead. How can he possibly think, and how can anybody reasonably suggest that he was able to determine who the leader was, someone that was compliant and a puppet of Netanyahu and the United States, that he was the one who could appoint that particular leader. Bizarre notion, and one wonders, what this man is really made of. I want to do Gaza in Iran, BBP. Can you explain what you mean by that, BBP? Because this would be an interesting subject to talk about. So they want to do, thank you for explaining that, I thought it was I. They want to do Gaza in Iran. Yeah, they do. They want to flatten it. But the other issue for me, and I do thank you for that, that's a great point. And welcome aboard, incidentally. Don't think I've seen you before. So please make some more comments. Let me know what you think, because that's really important in terms of this discussion. This is your channel. This is an opportunity for you to talk about the things that matter to you. And the other thing, BP, so thanks very much for your contribution already. I really do appreciate it. And this is what we do. We have a look at the social comments. US-Israel hitting schools, hospitals, desalination plants, oil depots, raining acid black rain in Tehran, genocidal ecocide, and collective punishment on Iranians. I love your comments. Thank you very much. I do appreciate that, BB. So the issue is that, and as BB's saying, that the United States hitting schools. Now, the hitting the school thing, initially they denied it. Then they said that, yes, it is likely that this happened by us. And then Trump comes out after realising perhaps it's a really bad idea to decide that, or to make a decision that you were the ones responsible for this. And then Trump comes out and says, well, actually, the Iranians did it to themselves. Bizarre. Absolutely bizarre. And no one actually believes that. Now, could you imagine for a moment what that would do in terms of the population in Iran if they thought that their own government was bombing? It was bad enough when they tried to kill all those protesters, or did some 20 to 30,000 protesters. I'm sure that didn't do the population any good at all. But to admit that you bombed a school, weren't it protesters? They were school kids, 165 of them primarily. And at the end of the day, Donald Trump suggests that it was Iran. No one believes him. And in fact, no one believes him about bloody anything. The man is a psycho, and that he's gone along with this crap because for whatever reason, he believed not only that Netanyahu had the power and authority to be able to wipe out Iran, that he believed that they had also the firepower to support Netanyahu in his genocidal attack on Iran, and they're failing. They're failing. This is a miserable, miserable attempt in order to be able to change what's happening. In fact, there's an article where it says, I think it was in the Australian, believe it or not, and if you read the Australian today, you think, God, is this really a Murdoch press? Because there's lots of shit coming out now suggesting that Donald Trump is wrong. In this article, it was said of Winston Churchill that he mobilised the English language and sent it into battle. Donald Trump's trick with the mother language is to douse it in gasoline, set it on fire, and drop it on a dumpster in the middle of his own parade ground. Now, that's coming from the Murdoch press. Whatever you think of the wisdom of efficiency of the president's policies, their effectiveness is almost always vitiated by an inability to articulate and communicate goals in a way that helps make them achievable. The US war in Iran is a near perfect microcosm of the presidential mismanagement. And that's coming. That is a direct quote from the Australian, because it is a mess what is happening over there. And the other question for me, and I think for all of you that are watching it, if you're from Australia, is to what extent will Australia become involved or trapped in this war? Can we sit back and hope that this only lasts for a couple of weeks? Or is it true that the Iranians have a whole host of weapons that no one knows about, that are far more powerful and far more destructive than those that they've employed to this particular point? My understanding is that they do, that they have some ballistic missiles that are, I forgot they call them, hyper something or other, ballistic missiles that move faster, that do far more damage. And then we have, God, folks, there's so much to talk about. I'm almost exhausted thinking about it. Then there is the Hezbollah fighting back on Israel. So why did Netanyahu at this particular point in time choose to invade Lebanon? What was happening in this man's narcissistic, hyperactive mind, psychopathic degree of intelligence, I think, that says that we can go now and raid Lebanon. And as a result, activate Hezbollah in Lebanon. Because they're now saying, bugger you, we're going to bomb you, not just in the northern part of the country in which we normally do, but we're going to hit you where it really hurts, and that is in Tel Aviv proper. So we're going to make sure that our bombs are now targeting industrial complexes, military complexes in Israel, and we're going to bomb not just you, but we're also going to bomb the people that sit around you, the citizens, the people in Israel who might have been cheering for a war because they believed that the Golden Dome would protect them from everything. But what they've now discovered is it is bullshit. The dome is only good for a certain period of time, depending on how many weapons you can shoot at the other weapons. And we must also remember that every time they fire a weapon, it's about $1 million. Every time now that the drones come in from Iran and from Hezbollah, they are now costing about $20,000. So it's a war of economics. Who's going to do this? Who can do it longer? Who's got the weapons? And what cost is it? At the moment, I think I heard a figure of between 500 million, I can't remember now. It was an excessive amount of money per day is being spent on this war. And what happens now if one side runs out? And who is going to run out who's going to run out first? Is it going to be, I did see a video today, I must confess, where, and I'm going to talk about videos in a second and clips that we get, but who would have thought that that Israel could run out? They got close, apparently, and they've now imported a whole shipload, plane loads of additional warfare. And who's supplying them? I guess the United States are. But then, as the United States also running out of possible ammunition as well and firepower. My guess is that and what would I know, basically, but my sense is that they are. It has to come to an end. You can't distribute this much weaponry and then at the end of the day say, well, okay, we've got this infinite supply, which is what Trump said, which is just going to keep flowing in. To supply them with the amount of weapons that they're using at this moment is impossible. And the United States have to have a declaration from Congress in order to pay for any future weapons to be manufactured. Is that likely? It is unlikely at this particular point for that to happen if this war continues. So at what point will the United States run out of weapons? It is damn soon. And what does it mean? One of the other things that really fascinates me about this is did the world decide that it wasn't a good thing for Iranians to have nuclear weapons because they would use them against the West? And but then you've got to ask yourself, well, North Korea have nuclear weapons. Why isn't it that they have used those, or have they used those weapons, or were they going to use those weapons, or are they likely to use those weapons against the West? I don't. Nuclear weapons are really a matter of distraction, and certainly no country that has nuclear weapons in the modern era, apart from World War II, have actually utilised them. So are they likely to use them? Would they use them? Maybe not. But would it act as a deterrent for other countries to invade them? Yes, it would. So it would have provided an environment in which many countries would have thought, well, forget about Iran. We can't do anything about them. We have to let them govern as they would. And that brings up another issue for me. Should we allow governments, no matter how horrible they are, should we allow those governments simply to govern themselves and people to decide eventually whether they're going to rise up against them? Because we know that every effort made by the United States in order to change governments has failed. We can go back to Vietnam, Afghanistan, Iraq. We can go through all of the wars, and we will discover that there has never been a change. In fact, it has developed chaos. There has been nothing but chaos. And there's an article in The Conversation, which I'll bring up, which I think requires some sort of consideration. And it says, does the regime change ever work? History tells us long-term consequences are often disastrous. The latest US-Israel bombings in Iran differ from last year's because of the stated aims this time is regime change. Engaged in the mass murders of civilians at home and fomenting violence abroad, the current Iranian regime has few friends internationally. We know all of that. But many would be glad to see Iran undergo a far-reaching program of political reform. For many in the Iranian diaspora, regime change imposed from outside is better than none. But the historical record of imposing regime change, particularly as undertaken by the United States, is patchy at best. Things rarely go to plan, and the long-term consequences are often disastrous. And I think it goes on to about some immediate examples spring to mind. Still fresh in the public mind would be the shocking scenes of desperate Afghans trying to leave Kabul in 2021. We all remember that, as the United States conceded it could not permanently defeat the Taliban. This admission came after 2 decades, thousands of deaths of US and allied troops, and tens of thousands of Afghan deaths. Many would also remember then US President George W. Bush's disaster speech in May 2003 about America's regime change efforts in Iraq. Began in March that year. Here, Bush addressed the press while standing in front of a huge banner that said, "Mission accomplished." The implications was regime change had been achieved in just a few months. And I guess, don't we have that same sense from Donald Trump? So this is a formula they use. Donald Trump, regretfully, can say whatever he likes, and there's a large majority, not necessarily majority, a large grouping of people who will agree with whatever he says. They just simply agree. And it is wrong, because I can tell you right now that Donald Trump doesn't know the outcome of this, that no one does. But I can tell you also that it is true. It's got to bring something else up here. It is true, though, I think, that the Iranians at this particular point seem to have the upper hand. And one of the other questions, I guess, that we need to be asking is, why did Iran attack so many of its neighbours? Well, my answer to that is that they weren't attacking the populace as such. They were attacking US installations in all of those countries. And the reason why they were attacking them was simply because they wanted to defeat their I guess, the United States bases that were able to track missiles coming into Israel, I guess. And also they wanted to be able to defeat them, I guess, in the air and make them less effective. So, and they have been able to do that. Does that mean that they then now have developed a whole host of enemies? They probably already were, but we'll have to wait and see what happens in regard to any of that. Now, with regard to Israel, slaughtered an entire village to find a body that left behind 40 years ago, Stone says. Okay. For true info on Iran's weaponry, listen to Alistair Crook, British diplomat and former, and Chris Hodges' report. Thanks for that. I wonder if you just tell us where that is, and I would be more than happy to look it up. The people were starting to raise up, but these Buster bombers had just galvanised the support to the current Iranian government. I think this is true. So this is a point, and I thank you for this. For true info on Iranian spirit, I didn't mean that one. I'll try this one. We'll try it again. The people were starting to raise up, but these bombings have just galvanised the support of the current Iranian government? Well, there's a number of issues around this one, I think. The first is that the number of people that support the Iranian government, the estimate is their supporters is around 30% of Iranian people. The rest of the other 90% hate them. The problem that they have, of course, is that the IRGC is so powerful and so strong that if you raise up now after what happened a few months ago, you're likely to get slaughtered. So they've been silenced to a large extent. So what does that mean? It means, though, that if someone attacks you, regardless of how you feel about your own government, it is your land, it is your country, it means a lot to you, and you don't like to see it destroyed. And so there will be people of that 70% who will now think, okay, we don't like our government, we don't like the way they behave, but we're certainly not going to stand by and watch our country be destroyed because we were not the aggressor. As terrible as this regime is in Iran, and the many attempts they've had to implement their policies and their behaviour around the world, they were not in this instance the aggressor. That was Israel. So we need to understand how the people may respond to this, because they're the ones that will eventually decide. So when Trump talks about this being a regime change and I'm going to support you, which he did when they were rioting a few months back, and then he pulls the pin. So what does this tell us about this disastrous yellow piece of shit? That he tries to encourage, he thinks he has so much power and influence that he can encourage a nation, in this case of 30% of the population, he can encourage a nation to rise up against a regime that kills them. He thinks that his voice is so powerful that this is what he can do. And it's woeful because he is not that powerful. This is the same man that said that he could go in and within a week this would be over and done with. This is the same guy who said he could end the Ukraine war in a day. Not just in a day, he could win that war and settle that war before his inauguration. There's the same man that said he's resolved 8 conflicts, which he hasn't. This is the man who lies to the United States people and to the world every day. And it's notable that today, well, yesterday, their time, I guess, he has decided to tell people that the war is going to end soon simply because that will lower the stock market and lower petrol prices as a result. He believes, and you kind of got to wonder, when does it get to a point that a person may consider that the power that they think they have will evaporate, that it simply doesn't exist? At what point does a psychopath realize that the influence they think they have over other people is no longer available to them? When does that happen? Because Trump either has to realize that or he has to be deposed. There has to be something done about this man so that we don't find ourselves not just in this terrible, terrible war where thousands and thousands, if not tens of thousands of innocent people are going to die, but where the world is sent into a frenzy over oil prices, the supply of materials, and all the things that you manufacture from petroleum, in fact. This is, this affects, it's bizarre, I think, when you look back and you see the degree to which this stuff is going to affect all of us, even here in Australia. Petrol prices here are skyrocketed in the last week. I don't know how that happens, given that, the war's only a week old and suddenly prices go up. I reckon there's some price gouging happening, but nevertheless, I just want to put up Elizabeth Cook's post because mankind is stupid. I have said that countless times. Humankind, to be more politically correct, Elizabeth, are stupid and bizarre, to say the least. There has never been a single man with the wisdom to rule. They all fail. We should never look to a leader, look to a group that truly cares about the people. Hey, go Elizabeth. I think that's so true. And, you could take it from a feminist perspective, I guess, and argue that the reference to mankind is simply referring to men as always being the ones that send people into war, which also is true. And my wife would love me for saying that, I'm quite sure. Yes, so it's a bloody mess. And I've spoken for 26 minutes about what a mess it is. We've all established that. So I'll try and find a way to move on. I just wanted to. There's an article on the ABC, which is about how Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth are selling their Iran war to Americans. I'm going to read part of that article because I think it's a really good article. And it helps us to understand a little bit about, I don't know, how gullible Americans are, how stupid these people are. Not all of them, because there are lots of people that are anti-Trump, but how they're going about selling it. So we get Hegseth standing up in front of us, telling us how we're going to win the war. We're going to obliterate them. Many lives are going to be lost. Sorry, I just saw a post here that was interesting. I might just, bear with. Might just put this one up. USA has spent over, that's $8 trillion on wars since 9/11 and 2022. How much since 2022? Wars are not cheap. USA debt is out of control. What power? Yeah, great post. Thank you, multi-iPhone. I appreciate that. That's a fabulous post, and it's so true. They're just spending countless amount of money on war. It makes you, I don't know. It makes me kind of wonder in Australia, how little emphasis we generally do place on defence, and how much. And it brings us to the question, which I always ask, is how much do we need to rely on the United States? The paranoia of the West, the I don't know, I'm trying to think of the right word in relation to the way we see the United States and Israel and some of these countries. But nevertheless, we need to make sure that we need to sever ourselves. I'm going to go back to this debate I often have, or the discussion I have about where we should be spending our money and what we should be doing in relation to this. So how does Donald Trump, so I'll bring us to this one. How does Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth selling their Iranian war? Day after day since the war in Iran began, the US Defense Secretary has taken an unapologetic tone about Operation Epic Fury. They are toast and they know it, Pete Hegseth said of the Iranian regime last week. This was meant to be a fair fight, and it's not a fair fight because we in the United States are also powerful and we're in control of everything that's happening, and that we're going to crunch them. We are punching them while they're down. So Mr. Hegseth's bravado was followed up with social media videos from the White House, splicing together real footage of the conflict with what appear to be clips from video games. Yes, that's what they're doing. They're actually endeavouring to sell us this idea of brutality against this evil regime. Now, I know from working with Vietnam veterans that part of the ploy is to insist that that the enemy is not human. That's the first thing one does. And in order to do that, we can have a look at some of the terrible things that the Iranian regime has done. And one of those terrible things that they keep bringing up is the beheading of children. Now, there is no evidence of that whatsoever, I hasten to add, but nevertheless it's brought up. And the reason why they keep talking about it in those terms is simply because they want us to believe that they are inhuman. Now, the regime, that is the leaders and the leaders of the Guard, are horrible, horrible, inhumane people. I don't dispute that. But there again, we must remember that the people that will eventually be killed, think of the school children that were bombed by the United States. The children that have been killed, and many others, is a strong indicator of where this is going. That there are many people who firstly don't support the regime, and there are many people who will die innocently, who should never be demonized, who should never be dehumanized. These are people trying to get on with their daily lives as best they can in a regime that is horrible to them. They're the ones that need our sympathy, and they're the ones whom we need to develop some form of understanding for. And I'm going to bring us to there's this other article in The Guardian which I think is really relevant. I'm just going to cite this one for you. So it says, this is an opinion piece in The Guardian, which is worth noting, and it says that Australia's blind refusal to question Trump's bombing of Iran risks ensnaring us in a dangerous folly. A piece in the White House at all costs indulges little but a sentimental notion of a US-Australia relationship that, and I love this bit, that no longer exists. God, I wish that was true. As the illegal American-Israeli air war on Iran spreads its treacherous, dangerous virus-like across the globe, Australia, despite its limp rhetoric of non-involvement, risks increasing ensnarement in a hyper-macho Trump folly with no apparent endgame. Call it US-Australia alliance management, call it an obsequious maintenance of at all costs of the reckless AUKUS. This article I wish I had written. Call it an obsequious maintenance at all costs of the reckless AUKUS submarine security pact, or call it what it more closely resembles, appeasement of a belligerent US administration hell-bent on reiterating its global domination at any cost. Regardless, Australia's passive refusal to challenge the US and Israel on everything from the legality of the murderous bombing of Iran to the war's opaque objectives draws us closer to the danger daily. And I think that says it all. And that's my sentiment exactly. I don't know what you think about that. As long as we stand alongside this crazy nation, as long as we support Zionism in Israel, as long as we support a nation that's focused on the Christian right, as long as we support the notions around neoliberalism, capitalism, oligarchyism, and any other ism that you can think of, I think we are in danger, because if we maintain those alliances, it is likely that we will be sucked into the void in relation to any conflicts that they suggest we enter. Because we do not want to offend people like Donald Trump. Recently, Albanese offended Donald Trump by not making a decision as he should. I'm going to bring us to this article in a moment, but not making a decision about what to do about the Iranian soccer team, the girls' soccer team. So, Trump, demonstrating a large degree of hypocrisy, had a go at Albo for not allowing them to stay in Australia. At the same time, Trump and the administration are doing all that they can to remove people from other countries, from their own country, even those that are American citizens, apparently. Yet, in this instance, because they're Iranian and because it serves Trump's purposes, not because he has any ideological association with the idea, but simply because he wishes to express his point of view around Iran as being bad people. And if Iranians cared to stay in Australia, he was going to support that. And of course, at the end of the day, this did happen. And I'm just trying to find us the article. So I'm pretty sure I'll put it up there. maybe I didn't. Damn. Bear with. It's not that one. It's not that one. Oh, here it is. I have got it, so I do apologise. I've got so many tabs across the top. So, Iranian soccer players. I'd really like to know your version of this. I'm just trying to read. Imagine how bad it would be if anyone from the right wing of Polly were in power. Look, can I just raise that? Because I like that word. Thank you very much. Because how bad would it be if anyone from the right wing of Polly were in power? Well, they were for 11 years. Let's not forget that. Didn't accomplish anything in that period of time. Just sort of bred status quo. And how sycophantic would they be to the Labor, to Trump and the American? They would be. I mean, AUKUS is a product of Morrison. Was supposed to be the French, which we'd stayed there. Went and he kicked the French in the testicles, and then decided to go to the United States for whatever reason. Wrong decision, wrong time, and our government should pull out of that. But yeah, you do ask an interesting question. It would be worse, no doubt in my mind anyway. So Iranian soccer players. So I don't know what you think of this, but if you give me some feedback, I really appreciate it. I think this is the most significant move that the Australian government's made for a heck of a long time. So Iranian soccer players escape minders and secure asylum in Australia. Good old Tony Burke. I love this photo of all of them. Great stuff. Tony's smiling. Some other photos of Tony smiling as well, I think. Somewhere down here. Here he is signing their documents. In the early hours of this morning, in a secure location in Brisbane, 5 Iranian footballers broke into a spontaneous cry of "Aussie, Aussie, Aussie!" Home Affairs Minister Tony Burke was at the room with them. Iran were live. Oh, no one read that. He had just confirmed the women will be granted temporary humanitarian visas by the Australian government, ending an agonising period for the athletes who had been in the spotlight since being labelled traitors on Iranian state TV for not singing the national anthem before a game. I find that fascinating because I noticed that when Australians are out on the field and they have to sing the Australian national anthem, none of them open their mouths because none of them know the words. Interesting observation, Tony. Thank you very much. Until this point, the government had been tight-lipped about the attempt to offer the athletes asylum, even as US President Donald Trump rubbish Prime Minister Anthony Albanese on social media for failing to protect them. Isn't there an irony? I'm going to come to this. Don't you think there's an irony that Donald Trump is bombing the shit out of Iran and then, on one hand, killing, which will be tens of thousands of people, who gives a crap, and then concerned about Iranian soccer team, women, note women, and he's a misogynist prick, so I don't know why he's concerned about them. But nevertheless, so what's the point that he's making, that somehow Donald Trump suddenly is this humanistic version of reality? I don't get it, but nevertheless, this is what he's trying to do. But Mr. Burke said the government's silence had been part of a delicate operation to enable the players to safely express a desire to stay in Australia. These women are great athletes, great people, and they're going to very much feel at home in Australia. And I did notice, just in passing, that in question time today when Tony Abbott, God, heaven forbid, Tony Burke got up and spoke about this issue, Tony did say, welcome back home to Australia. So the indication was that even this was an extension of a visa, that the application for asylum has also been granted. He didn't say that as such, but we're referring to them as being home, and in Australia would be a strong indicator, I think, that that he is referring to them as Australian citizens now, which mean they have been granted. It's only 5 of them at this point. More will be, if others apply, they will also be granted, even some from their supporting team. So, just to carry on, Iranian women's national football team players, Fadna, so I won't go through all their names because I can't pronounce them, were among a group of players who did not sing the national anthem before their opening match with South Korea, the Women's Asia Cup on March 2nd. But days later, before their match against Australia, players sang the anthem with their hands either raised in the salute or across their hearts. The next day, footage emerged of radical conservative television presenter Mohammad Reza Shahrizabah calling out the players and calling for traitors to be dealt with more harshly in times of war. This is no longer some symbolic protest or demonstration. In wartime conditions, going there and refusing to sing the national anthem is the height of shamelessness and betrayal. The disgrace of this shameless betrayal should remain on their shoulders, and they must be properly dealt with so that others take a warning from it. Under the Islamic Republic's penal code, corruption or treason could lead to lengthy prison sentences or the death penalty. And I'm not going to go into it, but what does it take in the United States to be called a traitor? Burn a flag. You're a traitor. Exhibit some sort of anti-Trump trope would mean that you're a traitor. That the fine line between being just a decent human being and being a traitor is pretty fine, I think, in the United States. Yet, they thought it was okay for these women to not sing the Iranian national anthem. Whereas, when the guys in the football, NFL, took the knee some years ago, they were seen as traitors, as they were standing up for black rights. So, where does this line sit? Well, it sits where it's convenient. And at the moment, for the Trump administration, this issue is convenient. And that's about as far as it goes. JG, thank you for this. I was going to just talk about this too. So, JG's just giving me a reminder. So, I'm sure Pauline would be asking someone to please explain multi. Yeah, that's fair enough. And the reason why I brought that up was that I thought it was fascinating that we haven't heard from One Nation. Now, some people may have. I haven't. What do One Nation think about these women staying in Australia? After all, according to Pauline, all Muslims are bad people. All of them. That would include these women who are now seeking asylum and who will be living in Australia next to, hopefully, Pauline. I hope they all set up a little camp, a soccer camp, next to Pauline's country property in Queensland, the multi-million-dollar property she's got at you and my expense. It would be fabulous, wouldn't it? But they are silent on this particular issue. And the reason why they're silent is because they know that this particular issue matters, that the Australian people are sympathetic to these women. We don't want them to return back to their own country where they're likely to be executed. That would be wrong. I was going to say that's un-Australian, but it's just inhumane and it's wrong. And Pauline Hanson would lose votes hand over fist if she made any statements about these Islamic women. And of course, one of the issues that I did want to raise is this one. Credit and Blast Labor solution to fuel shortages. So this is something that's been happening in Parliament today in question time. Chris Bowen has been having the time of his life, as he does, because the issue around the oil, the provisions of oil, and our supply of oil have been questioned by the right wing. Bowen keeps saying there's billions of gallons in reserve, and he keeps emphasising the fact when the opposition talk about it, they are reserves. They're not even used at the moment. We haven't even accessed them. They are only reserves. This is what he keeps saying. And then I noticed this clip when I was setting up for this today, where Peter Credlin had to insist that that this was all wrong, and that part of the problem that we have in this country is we listen to crazy people like Peter Credlin, you know, who looks like the woman that should be caring for 101 Dalmatians, you know, and I often forget that woman's name. But nevertheless, Peter's here spreading disinformation about all this. Now, this admittedly is a day old. Maybe she would change her tune, but I doubt it. But this is her talking about this particular issue.
Look, the Iranian war has also highlighted our chronic lack of energy security. It's more than a decade since we've had the 90-day supply of liquid fuels onshore. That's the mandated amount we should have in our stockpile under the international energy rules. The 8 refineries we once had with their storage has just dwindled to 2.
It hasn't. Peter, Pumpkin Eater. It hasn't just dwindled to 2. It was 8, and 6 of those have been decommissioned by the Liberal Party, by your party. And so you can't blame the Labor Party. Haven't been in there for all that long. You can't blame the Labor Party for this. But this is what she's attempting to do, because this is her modus operandi. If we can't, in order to explain things, we must Labor-splain. We must make sure that Labor are the ones that bear the brunt of any criticism. And that's exactly what Peter's doing here.
Partly because of Labor government's aversion to fossil fuels. We've currently got
nothing to do. No, Peter, Pumpkin Eater, you've got it so wrong. It has nothing to do with the aversion to fossil fuels. Those 6 that were there were decommissioned by you, because you, I'll bring this back up. The problem is, does anybody know where our reserves were going to be according to the Abbott government? Come on, someone just guess. Someone just tell me. Where were the reserves going to be? Well, this may or may not surprise you. The reserves, the Australian reserves for petroleum, were going to be held in Texas. Now, for those of you that are not aware of this simple fact, here in Australia, we don't have a Texas. We have states that are much bigger than Texas, but we don't have a place called Texas. Texas resides, believe it or not, in the United States. So some 10,000 kilometres away was going to be our oil reserves. Now, to me, none of that makes sense. But we must have done a deal with the government, the Texas government, whoever that is, in order to keep our reserves, our storage there. Now, in the meantime, the Labor Party have increased the reserves, the capacity to hold those reserves in Australia. Now, call me stupid, as some people will, but that's, to me, seems like a good idea. I don't know whether you agree with that or not, but to me, it was reasonable. If we need to keep petrol, we keep it near as close as we can to the places whereby we can refine it, which are now 2. So Peter has got no friggin' idea what she's talking about. She is a crazy woman, and what can one expect when you have a close relationship with Tony Abbott?
Got less than a month of petrol, diesel and avgas here in Australia, meaning that any prolonged disruption to the Persian Gulf could bring economic activity here to a virtual standstill. Global oil and gas prices have already spiked some 30%.
Number 1, okay, we'll do enough of Peter, because she depresses me, quite frankly. The reality is, according to Chris Bowen, that there are supplies still coming in to Australia. They have not stopped. Now, don't know specifically where they're coming from, but not everything goes through the Strait of Hormuz. So, and a lot of supplies can actually get here via lower end of South Africa. So, even though I think the waters are pretty touchy there, that's why it's fraught with danger as well. Who knows what insurance companies think of that? But the reality is supplies are still coming. We do have reserves that'll last us for 30 days. She says 90 days, according to that. I don't know about that, so I'm not going to comment about it. And that there are more supplies coming to Australia. So we're not going to run out. The other issue for me is, to what extent do we have, and someone might like to answer this, and I really should have looked it up before I came on, but do we have enough supplies in the ground? Can we produce enough to maintain ourselves independent of any overseas supplies of petroleum? I think we have enough gas to be able to do that without sending it over, but do we have enough petroleum? It's an interesting question. If anybody's got a response to that, yes, so someone has put up, thanks, Marty, that's what I was saying. Oh, wrong one. Don't want to do that. Sorry about that. 6 oil refineries in Australia were close to Australia under LNP. In 2020, Scott Morrison did a deal for USA and Malaysia to hold 60 days fuel reserves on behalf of Australia. Thank you. I didn't know where they were specifically. I knew that they were in Texas. They are lying. I'll clear that. Oh, no, put it up again. They are lying. We're only short of high octane gas. Okay. Etal, thanks, Etal. You're amazing. Keep it going. So I'll bring that up. I'm trusting that you're right. I just want to say that. We have enough diesel, but not enough light crude for petrol. Oh, I didn't know that. Well, that's an issue. I'll have to follow that up because I actually don't know the answer to that. We aren't allowed to explore for oil anymore due to regulations. So it's a moot point how much we have in the ground. Okay, I accept that. I'm the first to admit that I don't know everything. There's a lot. What I do know, you could barely fit on the end of a pin. Was there a time when we had a national logo? Okay. Stock market's down again. War ends, so Trump and his mates. Yep, that's true. So stock market's down again. War ends, so Trump and his mates can make a killing yet again. Yes, but just think about that. What power can you have that you have so much influence over the financial market that you just whisper a few words and suddenly everybody jumps to attention and says either I've got to sell my shares or I've got to buy some more. Amazing stuff. And as it's done, I kind of partly agree with this statement, but I don't know how they could have moved any faster. But yeah, it does raise an interesting question. If we were able to move to renewables faster, if we were all encouraged to, I tell you what, here's a strange hypothesis. Let's say we all magically move to electric cars, solar panels on our roof, batteries in our garages. If we were able to do all of that, would we have the need? Well, we would, I guess, because there are products that are made from petroleum, and not everything can be done through electric. But if we were able to do all that, would this be a major problem? Okay. Right. Oh, GJ, another good point. I love you, man. And I just need to say, if you feel so inclined, please hit the thanks button and send me a cup of coffee. I would appreciate it. And the more we move towards renewables and battery technology, the less we will be reliant on the oil barons that strangle us at every turn they can. Yeah, please help my site. Remember to subscribe, ring the bell for further notifications. Do what you need to do. Heaps of videos. I'm trying to get to 10,000 by the end of the month. Looks like it's going to be a bit of a struggle, but I appreciate if you would share my videos and hit the like button as well. I have an incredible number of people that do like them for some strange reason, but I do appreciate any feedback. Okay, and certainly the more we move to renewables and battery technology, obviously the less we would be reliant on other stuff. There's no doubt about that. 20. So Brian says 20% of gas is used in domestic industry. They're embracing electricity bikes because you don't have to give the government money to use them. That's true, even though they're banning them in certain states because they didn't need a license, I think. Australia is the best wind and solar in the world. Thanks, Peter. Agree with that as well. So we've got a few minutes before I sign off. If there's anything that you think that you would like me to discuss, I've got tomorrow at 1 o'clock South Australian Central Time, I'm speaking to Daniel, whom I'm putting out a video later on this afternoon. It'll be a bit latish now, I think, but watch out for it, because in this video I'm interviewing Daniel, who is going to talk about Islamic faith. He's a Muslim, obviously, but he's going to talk about... Oh, thanks, JG, again. God, you're keeping me going, buddy. I really appreciate it. $7.99. Thanks, mate. Fantastic. Have a coffee on me. Thank you. Thank you. I'll just bring that up because that's important. Whoops, wrong one. I'll get it right eventually. Thanks, DJ. I love you, man. Tell you what. Okay. What else have we got? So, Debbie, thanks for seeing me fired up as well. I just want to finish with this. I think I do what I do, and I probably don't say this enough. As you can see by my 1/3 here, I'm a social worker by profession. I do what I do because when I retired, I wanted to follow through on my social work values. I wanted to point out issues that were unjust, unfair, inequitable. And so in all of my posts, no matter how bizarre they might seem and how critical I am of Trump and others, I'm always going to punch up to those people that are more powerful than myself and more powerful than you. I'm always going to stand up for the people, in my view, that matter, the people that are vulnerable, the people that are unemployed, the people that have got disabilities, mental well-being problems, physical disabilities. Anyone who's disadvantaged. But I'm going to punch the shit out of those people who sit above us all, who make decisions that harm the rest of us. Oh, thanks, PF. Thanks, Wood. Thank you, guys or people. I don't know if you guys or not, but I really appreciate Stacks. Thanks. And thanks again too, as well. I appreciate it. So I guess what I'm saying is that it's important that, everyone has access to the internet. You do, I do, we all have access. We can all do this thing. Some of us are more motivated to do it than others. I'm retired. I've got plenty of time. I spend most of my day preparing for this, doing YouTube videos and stuff. I don't expect to make a lot of money from it. In fact, I make fuck all. But it's actually not the point. But I'll tell you what does excite me. Seeing my channel grow. 12 months ago, I was at, I think my wife will probably correct me, I was at 400, I think, subscribers. It's now grown to nearly 10,000. So there's either a lot of people who are online who just love hating me, or there's a lot of people online who appreciate what I'm doing. And I am appreciative. Shake. Thank you. I'm so appreciative of, oh, we've done that one. I think I've got the fight we need. Oh, thanks, man. Look, I just need to say I don't do it for the accolades. But I do it, and I love the support. That's what I need to say. Love the support. So many people say not only just great things about my channel, but they say, and not always great things about me. They say, thanks, Robbo. Oh God, I'm overwhelmed. I'm overwhelmed at the moment. I don't know what to say. But they say, see, a lot of the people on my channel are super smart. And that's what I love, because there's in the comments, I read all the comments section. I want you to know that. And there are people that are for criticism, and that's fine. I enjoy the criticism. But one of the things that impresses me the most is how, like on this feed today, someone says here, oh, Trevor, I'll put this up if you don't mind. Trevor says, right, yeah, okay. So I have people like Trevor. I'm starting to become a disability support worker. I think that's amazing. And it's, like, I don't know who's starting to be. Someone come online and tell me they're starting to be a social worker. I'll celebrate that as well. But what are you studying to do? How are you becoming that? Are you, I was, I'm not going to go into the long story, so I'm not going to bore you. But I was 40 when I went back to high school. Never passed an exam in my life. Terrible at school. Played sport, did all that shit. I went back at 40, went to high school, then went on to university. I want to know, there's always an opportunity for all of us. That's why I do this, because I know that regardless of my age, I can offer something. I know at 40, who would have thought that I would have gone to university? I would never have dreamt that. I used to think about going to university was about as realistic as flying to the moon. And I mean that. That's exactly what I used to think. Until I went to high school, realised I wasn't as stupid as I thought I was, and then went to university and discovered I was more stupid than I thought I was. But nevertheless, was able to get through a 4-year social work degree. So I know that we can achieve whatever we want to achieve. And when I retired, I decided that I wasn't going to sit back, watch television, become a vegetable, that I needed something. And that's why I'm here. I'm here because it means something to me, and it means something, hopefully, to the people that I address and talk to. Thanks, Padura. Wow, can't believe it. So I just wanted to make that clear, that that there's a focus in my madness. There is a focus. Thanks, Paduraj. And that I think to some extent we could share, like, I'd love to be able to share in that notion that we can achieve whatever it is that we want to achieve. Someone has to push back against, or push up, I think, against the shitty things that happen in our world. And even if it's only 10,000 subscribers, it's 10,000, sorry, it's 9,400 or something, 600 that I had 12 months ago. And not super smart, I just fact check everything, somebody. Good on you. I'll try and do the same. So I just want to finish by saying thank you, everybody. Thank you for those people that have contributed financially. I really do appreciate it. Watch out for, it's a long interview with Daniel, goes for an hour and a bit. Watch out, he has some fantastic things to say. I'll be popping that up in a couple of hours. Watch for it. And then tomorrow Daniel and I are doing a live feed about a whole range of issues. There'll be political issues, just to hear what he has to say. We're doing that at 1 o'clock though tomorrow. So please tune in to that one as well. So I just want to say thank everybody for being here. It's been a delight. As always, just make sure that you kind of look after yourselves.